Hi, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're here for you. Tonight we're talking about the ripple effect in training children in godly values. You can go to my website, trybiblicalcounseling.net, and you can read this for yourself. You can print it out. You can post it on the wall, throw darts at it, whatever you want to do. The story is told of a young man who entered college at age 13, graduated with honors, became a pastor, and he preached probably one of the most famous sermons in the world. The sermon was entitled, "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God." That sermon stimulated what was later referred to as the Great Awakening, a revival in this country. His name was Jonathan Edwards. He was born October 5, 1703. The Great Awakening can be traced back to earlier revivals in Scotland. Scottish minister William Tennant migrated to Pennsylvania in 1718. Together with his son Gilbert, began the Log Cabin College. That was the first American Presbyterian theological seminary in North America. It led to the formation of the College of New Jersey. Reverend Samuel Finley was trustee of the College of New Jersey. It became Princeton University. A fiery Dutch Reformed minister by the name of Theodore Jacobus Frelinghuysen arrived in New Jersey in 1720, preaching divine outpourings of the Holy Spirit and conversion. Through this pastor's efforts came the formation in 1766 of Queens College in New Brunswick, which became Rutgers University. In 1738, Reverend George Whitefield arrived in Savannah, Georgia. Traveling through the colonies, he preached 18,000 sermons over the next 32 years. The Great Awakening revival helped unite the colonies prior to the Revolutionary War. Calvinist denominations were split between traditional Old Lights who emphasized structure and ritual, and the revivalists who were called New Lights who emphasized personal commitment. The Great Awakening revival was part of the Pietist movement in Lutheran churches. It reshaped Presbyterian and Dutch Reformed churches, and it strengthened Evangelical Baptist and Methodist Anglican churches. The Great Awakening revival inspired Puritan Eleazar Wheelock to help found Moore's Charity School in 1754. It was reestablished as Dartmouth College. It inspired Anglican Reverend Samuel Johnson to help found King's College in 1754, renamed Columbia University. It inspired Baptist ministers Reverend James Manning, Reverend Isaac Backus, Reverend Samuel Stillman to help found the College of Rhode Island in 1764, renamed Brown University. The Great Awakening revival brought large numbers of African slaves to Christianity, being led by Presbyterian preacher Samuel Davies, who later became Princeton's fourth president. African Americans were welcomed into active roles in many white congregations, even as preachers. The first black Baptist churches were founded in Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia. The Great Awakening revival had a profound effect, as noted by Sarah Pierpont Edwards, wife of Jonathan Edwards, who wrote to her brother in New Haven of George Whitefield's preaching. She said, "It is wonderful to see what a spell he casts over an audience by proclaiming the simplest truths of the Bible. Our mechanics shut up their shops, and the day laborers throw open their tools to go and hear him preach, and few return unaffected." Ben Franklin wrote of Whitefield, "Multitudes of all denominations attended his sermons. It was wonderful to see the change soon made in the manners of all inhabitants. From being thoughtless or indifferent about religion, it seemed as if all the world were growing religious, so that one could not walk through town of an evening without hearing psalms sung in different families of every street. In his narrative of the surprising world of God in the conversion of many hundred souls, Jonathan Edwards wrote, quote, "And then it was in the latter part of December, and the Spirit of God began extraordinarily to work amongst us. There were very suddenly, one after another, 5 or 6 persons who were to all appearance savingly converted, and some of them wrought upon in a very remarkable manner. Particularly, I was surprised with the revelation of a young woman who had been one of the greatest company keepers, nice word, in the whole town. When she came to me, I had never heard that she was become in any way serious, but by the conversation I had with her, it appeared to me that what she gave an account of was a glorious work of God's infinite power and sovereign grace, and that God had given her a new heart, truly broken and sanctified. God made it, I suppose, the greatest occasion of awakening to others of anything that ever came to pass in the town." Jonathan Edwards continued, "I have had abundant opportunity to know the effect it had by my private conversation with many. The news of it seemed to be almost like a flash of lightning upon the hearts of young people all over the town and upon many hearts. Presently upon this a great and earnest concern about the great things of religion and the eternal world became universal in all parts of the town and among persons of all degrees and of all ages. The noise of the dry bones waxed louder and louder. Those that were wont to be vainest and loosest, and those that had been the most disposed to think and speak slightly of vital and experimental religion, were not generally subject to great awakenings." Jonathan Edwards added, "And the work of conversion was carried on in a most astonishing manner and increased more and more. Souls did, as it were, come by flocks to Jesus Christ. This work of God, as it was carried on and a number of true saints multiplied, soon made a glorious alteration in the town, so that in the spring and summer following 1735, the town seemed to be full of the presence of God. It never was so full of love, nor so full of joy. There were remarkable tokens of God's presence in almost every house. It was a time of joy in families on the account of salvations being brought unto them, parents rejoicing over their children as newborn, and husbands over their wives, and wives over their husbands. The goings of God were seen then in his sanctuary. God's day was a delight, and his tabernacles were amiable." He went on to say, "Our public assemblies were then beautiful. The congregation was alive in God's service, everyone earnestly intent on the public worship, every hearer eager to drink the words of the minister as they came from the mouth. The assembly in general were from time to time in tears while the word was preached, some weeping with sorrow and distress, others with joy and love, others with pity and concern for their neighbors. There were many instances of persons that came from abroad on visits or on business that partook of that shower of divine blessing that God rained down here and went home rejoicing, till at length the same work began to appear and prevail in several other towns in the country." He concluded saying, "In the month of March, the people of South Hadley began to be seized with a deep concern about the things of religion, which very soon became universal. About the same time, it began to break forth in the west part of Suffield," that's in Connecticut, "and it soon spread into all parts of the town. It next appeared in Sunderland. About the same time it began to appear in a part of Deerfield, Hatfield, West Springfield, Long Meadow, Enfield, Westfield, Northfield. In every place God brought his saving blessings with him, and his word, attended with spirit, returned not void." Jonathan Edwards said there is no leveler like Christianity, but it levels by lifting all who receive it to the lofty tableland of a true character and of undying hope, both for this world and the next. These and many more stories are told of the Great Awakening. And the Great Awakening is traced back to that sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, preached by Jonathan Edwards. But it was much more than that. As you noted in the discussion, it was overseas in Scotland and in Great Britain. It was in the colonies. It was everywhere. But it was in the northern part of the colonies, what we now call New England, where it really took heart and began. And Jonathan Edwards was at the heart of it. Look at the life of Jonathan and Sarah Edwards. A.E. Winship wrote a book, A Study of Education and Heredity, in 1900, and he listed the descendants of Jonathan Edwards. There was one vice president, 3 U.S. senators, 3 governors, 3 mayors, 13 college presidents, 30 judges, 65 professors, 80 public office holders, 100 lawyers, and 100 missionaries. Winthrop also examined a family known as the Jukes, 1877, while visiting the New York prisons. Richard Dugdale found inmates with 42 different last names, all descending from one man called Max, born around 1720 of Dutch stock. Max was a hard drinker, idle, irreverent, uneducated. Max's descendants included 7 murderers, 60 thieves, 50 women of debauchery, 130 other convicts, 310 paupers who combined spent 2,300 years in poorhouses, 400 physically wrecked by indigent or indulgent living. The Jukes' descendants cost the state more than $1.2 million. Today, it would be at least 10 times that much. Jonathan Edwards stated, I have reason to hope that my parents' prayers for me have been in many things very powerful and prevalent, that God has taken me under his care and guidance, provision, and direction in answer to their prayers. In 1739, he wrote a history of the work of redemption. He said, these mighty kingdoms of Antichrist and Mohammed have trampled the world underfoot and swallowed up the ancient Roman Empire. Satan's Mohammedan kingdom swallowing up the Eastern Empire. In his work, The Latter-day Glory is probably to begin in America, Jonathan Edwards proposed that since the old world had hosted Christ's first coming, the new world would be given the honor of preparing the earth for his second coming. The thought that the Son of Righteousness traveled from east to west contributed to the concept that America had a manifest destiny. When the time comes, the church's deliverance from her enemies, so often typified by the Assyrians, the light will rise in the west till it shines through the world like the sun in its meridian brightness. And if we may suppose that the glorious work of God shall begin in any part of America, I think if we consider the circumstances of the settlement of New England, it must needs appear the most likely of all American colonies to be the place where this work shall principally take its rise. Jonathan Edwards, who became president of Princeton College, resolved, quote, never to do anything which I should be afraid to do if it were the last hour of my life, end of quote. There is no question that North America, the Western societies, have been a great boon to this world in terms of the gospel. The dark continent ceased to be the dark continent when the light of the gospel shined forth. It is now on the road in the other direction. More missionaries went out from the United States and Great Britain than any other place in the world. And the world is a better place because of Western civilization, primarily America, North America. But that's over. Why? The history of Jonathan Edwards and his family, anecdotal as it might be, I believe serves as a pattern. Families that serve God, that live honorably, that inculcate decent values in their children, have a progeny. And those that live in excess and don't care about God or about other people, they have a progeny too. Now, every once in a while, there's a generation, there's a family, somebody pops up and they're totally different. But the thrust is unmistakable. And I think that thrust is the same in terms of an entire community of people called the United States of America. As long as we pretended that God was important, as long as people had respect for God, for church, for Christianity, as long as they even pretended that they were Christians and cared, this country flourished. When they decided they didn't want to play anymore, and they found people who would support them and empower them through vain philosophies and other kinds of things, we have done nothing but deteriorate. Our family is going down. Will America feature prominently in the end time scenario? It's not in the Bible. Nothing in the Bible says anything about the Western Hemisphere. One end of days kind of guy who does a lot of work in this area supposes that the United States, or perhaps the entire Western Hemisphere, North and South America, are going to disappear. That God's going to destroy them. Take them off the map. The Bible in the book of Revelation talks about a time when a third of the population of the world is going to disappear. It's going to die. A third of the water, a third of all vegetation, a third of all all land mass going to be destroyed. It's not the Middle East. It's not North Africa. Egypt is mentioned, and Libya, not Russia, Turkey, Persia, they're mentioned. There's no mention of America. A Western leader comes to rescue Israel from the Mohammedan threat, the Russian threat, the Egyptian threat. And that's as close as it gets. But he turns out to be the Antichrist. What kind of a heritage is that? Think about it when you're raising children. You're thinking about raising children. And you say it really doesn't matter if I stay home and take care of them and inculcate these values, or I turn them over to somebody else I really don't know. Over to a company that's going to be rotating teachers or caregivers in and out while my child is here. Or you're going to succumb to our federal government's goal to put every pre-kindergarten kid in the state school, the federal schools, so that we can indoctrinate them sooner. Think about where that's going to lead your family 40 years, 50 years from now.